Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading for Monday, May 23rd, 2022. The weekend kind of got away from me, especially on Saturday, which I spent at the Gaithersburg Book Festival for the first time in person since 2019, and I'm so excited about that. But I'll put off gushing about that for now because this video is to update you on my week of AM reading. Hopefully I can make this short and sweet. Though I do have a fair bit to talk about, I think, starting as always with the latest short story I've read in this collection, which is Dorothy Parker's Complete Short Stories. I've been reading one short story per AM reading video since last May. And now I am up to the story Cousin Larry, which she published in 1934. This follows another one of her designs where she gets close into a character's head who's giving a long rambling dialogue. This character, who is a woman, doesn't even have a name. We're just hearing her talk to us, the audience, whoever we are, about this relationship, as it were, that she has with a man she calls her Cousin Larry, something affectionate, where mostly she's dissing his wife for being a killjoy and for getting in between, or trying to get between the relationship between her and this man Larry. So there's some implication, of course, of adultery or some sort of affair going on, but of course this woman wouldn't cop up to anything like that. This is the type of thing I don't think that speaks to me all that much. It's a tone of voice. It's, I guess, some sort of commentary, as usual, about social relationships. But it's just, it's too fleeting. It's too, close and personal and, dashed off to, have much dimension to it. Where, we just get like a brief description of this woman, in profile for 1 second, and then she starts rambling, and then we get another brief description of her in profile, and then it's done, and I'm like, okay, well, there we go. The first book I finished last week is The Slaughterman's Daughter by Yaniv Iczkovits, which he wrote in Hebrew and was translated by Or Sharf. I read this for the Maybe Midrash Readathon, where we are to read serious works of fiction and nonfiction pertaining to a world religion. And this book chronicles events that are happening in the Pale of Settlement to Jewish characters in the 1880s. The general thrust of the novel is that there is this man, this married man, who up and disappears on his family, which kind of leaves them destitute and leaves his wife chained to a marriage. It's called aguna in Hebrew. And that means she can't move on. She can't remarry and is sort of stuck and is doing badly with that, or at least has one bad episode with that. So that her sister, who is an unusual woman called a wilde chaya, a wild animal, because she is in fact taught to be a shoktet, a kosher slaughterer. Anyway, she decides she's going to go and make things right by sneaking off in the middle of the night to force this man, who they think is in Minsk, to give her sister a get, which is a divorce, so that she can move on with her life if her husband abandoned her. So she goes off with sort of the town outcast, who Zizek, who had been forcibly conscripted into the Tsar's army, and then really it destroyed his family, and he came back 30 years later after surviving and lives on the outskirts of town and decides to help Fanny. Yeah, we follow them for a while. Things go awry almost immediately. They come across a family of bandits, and because Fanny is such an unusual individual, instead of acquiescing quietly to being burgled and then, raped and killed, she kills her attackers in the kosher slaughtering style, and then she and Zizek are really more on the run. And the secret police come across this murder. We follow a secret police character, this man Novak, who spends a lot of the book, I guess, being clever and tracking them down, but not really understanding why they're doing what they're doing, because he believes the motives are far more broad and about, insurrection, as it were, against the Russian Empire. So there's a little bit of cat and mouse, and for a little while it's kind of high plot like that, but then things kind of slow down in the middle, and we get introduced to more characters, and we get a long rambling section of Zizek's backstory, and it's more like Iczkovits is setting a scene, as it were, and then really progressing the plot for a while, which I have mixed feelings about. I liked the style of the book a lot. It's sort of this mix, I think, between Quentin Tarantino and the Coen brothers, and also sort of a grittier but still sort of bitingly sarcastic take on these shtetl characters, like Sholem Aleichem would have done, like for his in-person contemporaries. So that Iczkovits is kind of writing a scene. So broadly, I feel like this stopped being about something, so fast-paced as like the cat and mouse or whatever, and it's more of almost like a contemplative look in a way at the death of the Russian Empire, because there's so soon after this there will be the Bolshevik Revolution. And for the Jews, this is sort of the end of this way of life for Ashkenazi Jews who live in these shtetls, and he really goes in deep to how insular they are, sort of how closed off and resistant to major change, so that there's really no progressive way forward for them, and a lot of that has to do with the institutionalized anti-Semitism that they face, the violence, and then there's from pogromists, and also their inability to move to certain places that can only live in the Pale of Settlement, and there's just widespread xenophobia against them. So there's a lot of external pressure, and then that turns a lot of the Jews internal to sort of closing themselves off, and they're sort of stuck in a way, like their way of life is very different, say, than a lot of the Russian progressive in terms of, I guess, technological or cultural advancement anyway. So it is sort of a farewell, little less nostalgic, I suppose, to the world it is saying farewell to, but by the end of it, I think when the stories wrap up for Fanny and the people around her, I feel like Iczkovits has a little bit of compassion for them. I think he particularly does have compassion for his characters who break the mold a bit, because most people don't. And most people just stay stuck in their ways. And Fanny is a character who, for her flaws and that her decisions have some bad outcomes, she still makes choices and doesn't feel too hindered. And I don't think she comes off as too much of a badass female stereotype either. And in a way, I think that's the same for her brother-in-law too, who kind of leaves for religious reasons, in a way that the yeshiva he was a part of is sort of so stuck in a strict dogma, and seem to have an inability to, have a sort of a learning and, dynamic environment for challenging the texts, which I feel like is the point of yeshiva education. Anyway, so I feel like there's a lot of commentary in there too, but I will stop talking about this now because I'll be mentioning it again in a maybe Midrash wrap-up at the beginning of June probably, but I did enjoy this book. The next book I finished this week was Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday, which I read for my page 112 tag for May, so I'll link that video and my maybe Midrash readathon video, TBR video down below. This was a series of novellas, and it's, I would say, almost style over substance, except I don't think it's quite that bad. I feel like there is some emotionality and sentimentality here with the characters, except that she definitely doesn't go deep into their heads and sort of that, any sort of melodrama in that way. But it's an interesting premise. We start with this novella, or like a section, that is a young editor, literary editor, who is named Alice, and she is in a relationship with a man who is based off of Philip Roth, who is in fact someone that the author was in a relationship with in her 20s when Roth was several decades older. So in a way, that's an autofiction part of the book where Alice is trying to, I guess, decide in a way if she has anything to say. Like, she wants to be a writer, but does she have anything to say when she, you know, identifies so strongly with the world of her, you know, character, this man she named Ezra Blazer, and his sort of, you know, classical, sort of Western ideals of what writing and literature and culture means. And she, I think, is in, you know, the relationship is sort of seen in a positive light, that he is able to, you know, show her and bring her into that world to experience those sorts of things, and also baseball, because they love baseball. And anything sort of icky about the relationship is sort of in the lines of the fact that he is of failing health, and she might want to, you know, think about having a family, but although she doesn't really want to at this point, but in the future she might want to, or, you know, she would want to be with someone a little more vivacious and not someone she had to, you know, take care of for his physical needs so much. So there's a little bit of that strain, but it's certainly not about anything like icky or gross in terms of how she sees the relationship. But as she is sitting there, a lot of what she is trying to do, while also sort of living this life, the high life of culture with Blazer, is debating, does she have anything to say? And this is in the years right after September 11th, so there is some, you know, cultural, political background, I should say, about, you know, the wars against terrorism that the U.S. is involved in, and about, I guess, the experience of Muslims and so forth, and she, you know, sees a halal, I should say, a hot dog salesman, and wonders if she can write from his perspective as this sort of you know, white lady from, young woman from, you know, a white background. And so the second section is in fact told from the perspective of a Muslim Iraqi American man who is detained at Heathrow, I think in 2008. And it seems quite apparent that it's because of, you know, they just aren't buying his story. He's sort of on his way to Iraq. He's like doing a little bit of a layover in London and to stay with friends, and then he's on his way to Iraq to visit his brother. And they just don't buy his story, because I think because of the paranoia and sort of xenophobia it feels like of the time period. But again, Halliday doesn't, you know, get into the melodrama of that. But a lot of the main story is him, you know, cooling his heels in Heathrow and dealing with a bunch of bureaucracy. And then the backstory, because there is some, does go into fleshing out his life. And I feel like it's apparent that this is supposed to be Alice's attempt at writing. In fact, the man has the name Amar Jafari, and in my page 112 tag, she was privy to, she was actually part of jury duty, which I erroneously thought meant, thought she was waiting for her own hearing for something, but in fact she was waiting for jury duty, and they call out the name Amar Jamali, who isn't there, and then the main character in this section is called Amar Jafari, so I'm like, aha, maybe something's going on here. So anyway, she imbibes his character, and if I were to nitpick, I feel like he was a little too into the cultural classic, you know, literature and so forth that Alice was, but there is also stuff in here that is legit to, you know, having experiences, familial and, you know, socio-political for the particular time period around Iraq, and having an Iraqi family and that sort of thing. So it actually, I think it was my favorite section, that it was able to bring this character and this situation to life, and, you know, it was well written, and I don't think it was, you know, too, you know, style over substance, like that there was, you know, an emotional core to the characters as well. So I liked that. And then the third section was my least favorite. One of the major things for this Ezra Blazer character, much like Philip Roth, is that he spent his life waiting for the Nobel in Literature, which Roth never did get, but Blazer ends up finally getting awarded in 2011, and then that section is a transcript with a sort of a literary podcast or radio show or something like that, back and forth with an interviewee that's in, script form. And the only thing I really liked about that is that I listened to it on audio, and I enjoy listening to real, interviews with authors, so I thought, why not a fake one like that? But otherwise, the only thing that really I really cared about with that was another hint that, the second section was Alice's story. So there's that. So overall, again, yes, I did enjoy this one. Next, to return to the Maybe Midrash readathon, here is my nonfiction pick that I'm reading right now. It's called Beyond the Synagogue, Jewish Nostalgia as Religious Practice by Rachel B. Gross. This is a dry affair, very academic. She is a professor laying down a hypothesis, as it were, a philosophical hypothesis about how there's these nostalgic rituals that are kind of seen as secular, like, Jews who go after genealogy, or Jews who identify with Zionism or with the Holocaust, or Jews who, buy a bunch of, Jewish toys or paraphernalia for their children to teach Jewish culture, or, Jews who eat Jewish foods, traditional Jewish foods, or, traditional, American Jewish foods like deli food, that this is a religious practice, that I guess she's trying to bring these cultural practices and say that they are in fact a way of living religiously, because it's this ritualistic way of connecting to Judaism. So that is something, and I feel like she brings up some interesting points, although I'm not sure I still agree with the overall premise, but I'm not too far into it, and again, it is a little dry, so I wish it were a little less dry, but I'm still engaged, and I will be reporting back again when I do the Maybe Midrash wrap-up video in June. So check back for that. And finally, as always, I am ending with my BookTube prize pick, which is Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is a memoir, which I listened to on audio, and unlike any of the other BookTube prize videos I've talked about for the last 6 weeks or so, I've actually finished this one. Huzzah! It's nice to be on that end of the equation for once, but I can't say much about it. I'll just briefly say that this is a memoir about a Korean-American 20-something woman who lost her mother to cancer, and the memoir generally goes through the experience of what it's like to care for your mother in her final months, and what it is to be without her at this stage of her life. So that is the gist of it, and I read it for the BookTube prize as an official judge. I am judging for the quarterfinals, Group A for nonfiction. So the BookTube prize was started by Robert at Barter Hordes a couple of years ago. The goal is to judge the best in literary fiction, nonfiction, and translated fiction that was published in the US in the last year. So we are in the second of 4 rounds. We are whittling down the long list until we'll finally get to some winners and runners-up in October. But as per the rules of the game, I'm staying mum on my own ballot that I am judging at the moment, because I don't want to influence anybody else who might be judging this round or what have you. But when the quarterfinals results are announced in June, I will be responding in turn with my ranking video for what I thought of the books. So stay tuned for that as well. But in the meantime, I can link you to my TBR video that I did a couple months ago, and more information on the BookTube prize as well down below. So that about covers it for me now. It was a good weekend, but also a really hot weekend. The temperatures on Saturday soared to like 95 degrees. I wore a lot of sunscreen. It was actually a Neutrogena sunscreen that smelled really good. Not what I'm used to from sunscreen, but I seem to be free of burns, so that is good. And then last night there was some thunderstorms that I don't like thunderstorms. I'm not a fan of, loud, sudden noises, basically, but it is nice to maybe get a little reprieve, get a little bit of cooler weather again, at least for a little while. We'll see how long it lasts. And anyway, expect me, speaking again of the Gaithersburg Book Festival, I did shoot some footage that I hope to be putting together into a video to show you all later in the week. So excited. I hope the footage came out as well as the experience overall did. I just had so much fun. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone. And I'll see you next time.